Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today's November 5, 2025. I want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also want to thank Frank Zappa for introducing me to today's guest, Conrad, St. Clair. Where the heck are you calling in from?
I am in Brandywine, Maryland.
Very cool. I really appreciated reviewing part one, which was June 25th. And we did cover music pretty good. Most of my music questions, I left one out. And I wanted to just add that before we delve into all these other topics.
Sure.
And here it goes. You kind of brought this up. It's about the basic question I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to set it up with a bunch of gobbledygook. And it is, why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music? Now, I think when I first formulated this question about a year or two ago, I think you reiterated something I just found out and put on my notes. Frank Zappa says, it is unnatural to play in 4/4 because you don't speak in 4/4.
Well, that
but
isn't exactly what I said, but...
Well, yeah, but it's interesting that Frank said that.
Yeah.
Now, do you?
But he didn't say that. He didn't say 4/4. I'll finish your question, and then I'll clarify that.
No. My question was going to be: do you want me to say all this stuff, or you want to just jump into it and then I'll bring it up later? Maybe that's better.
Well, the quote from Frank is essentially saying it's not 4/4, but that regular rhythms like groups of 4 and groups of 3 within we don't talk like that, and that speech is polyrhythmic. Not necessarily, he wasn't making a comment about time signature 4/4 versus any other time signature. Time signatures are different from polyrhythms, right? So Frank's point is that polyrhythmic performances for playing as a musician should be the more natural way to go, because we do speak polyrhythmically all the time. If I keep a click going and I'm trying to ignore it, I'm just talking normally, right? If you go back afterwards and you transcribe the rhythm that I'm actually speaking, it's going to look insane, right? But I'm just naturally just, that's, Dangerous Kitchen or Jazz Discharge Party Hats, right? Where Frank's just talking, and then Steve Vai goes back and he, learns the part, right? And I'm sure the actual written, I've never seen the actual written out Jazz Discharge. Actually, no, I'm lying. I have seen it. But it's, it's ridiculous because it's just a person speaking naturally. So that's what I was getting at with that reference.
What you were saying, but the quote that Frank says is, it is unnatural to play in 4/4 time because you don't speak in 4 time. You were sort of laying out deeper what he was saying with your quote.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And we don't speak in even groups of 4 beats per measure either. We don't, unless we're trying to do a hip hop song. It's not the way we talk.
Why don't you answer the question before I talk? Why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music?
I don't know. I'm not a music historian. I mean, I suspect it's easy to dance, but especially even classical music, you have back in the day, you have lots of dances in 3 and 5. That's fairly common, even in Western classical music. It's not like, Balkan folk music, which is, could be 15/16 into 7/8, that it's a very, very different musical tradition. I don't know. I'm sure there is some sort of root thing that sort of guided everybody else. I mean, that's the way music works, right? Is somebody has an idea and then other people sort of glom onto that, and over time maybe the preponderance of music that people wrote was in 4. I don't really know.
No, it's really good how you answered that, because you said maybe it's easy to dance. So I'm going to just say some of the things that I've heard in response, and you can play off those as you will. Besides being intuitive and easy, it might be because it's in sync with walking or marching.
I don't buy that.
That's my favorite part of our first 2 hours and 20 minutes is when Frank responded in the LA Free Press to Pauline Oliveros, a sound above and below and all that, and you go, that your response was something like that. I don't buy that. That's intellectual bullshit. I love when you lay your cards on the table, honestly. Okay, here's the next one. Not what, but it's in sync with our heartbeat rhythm.
No.
Because what do you think our heartbeat rhythm is?
It's a...
Which is what time signature?
It could be anything, right? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. Like there's no, it's arbitrary to just say that is 4 beats. It is, unless you're considering this. Right, but our hearts don't beat like that. It's, there's a pulse, sure, but arbitrarily grouping that into 4, that makes no sense.
Okay, here's what I've asked many musicians over this year. What our heartbeat rhythm is? Some go, it's 5/8. No, it's 3/4. No, it's 6/8. So I like that it's hard to distinguish exactly what our heartbeat.
Yeah, because you're going to make, I can make that so. That could be, I could notate that in all sorts of different ways, and it all depends on where I define the pulse to be, right? So, that's way too arbitrary. It's a single pulse, right, with a call and answer, if you will, which is the close and then the open, right? Good.
Okay, here's Captain Beefheart. Beefheart varied from what he called the mama heartbeat. He said that the same old 4/4 rhythm beat is related to fascism. It's so it's so fixative, so hypnotic, so synthesized to where it's dangerous to the heart. It's faster than the heart. Disco is dangerous. He wanted non-hypnotic music to break up catatonic state.
I'll buy that before I buy any of the other stuff that you said.
Because, Drumbo, John French, Beefheart's drummer, expanded what he called the drunken sailor stagger into percussion, sort of like how Buster Keaton turned a stumble into a dance.
Right.
And my sister was a cheerleader, and she would take an empty soup can and throw it down the stairs. Midwesterns, we have basements, and the can would bounce on the stairs and go, and make a beat so that she could come up with a new beat for cheerleading. So it's that drunken, and this other kid told me that's what Jay Dilla did with drumming. I've never studied Jay Dilla, but anyways, it's an interesting phenomenon, this whole idea of 4/4 time. So let's jump into books, because one other thing that amazed me was how fast, when I said, what's the best thing for a human being, my very first question, for 40 years, 1,000 interviews, you said reading. And I'm like,
I said breathing.
Oh my God, I thought you said reading.
I said breathing.
Well, I'm glad you.
But reading's pretty important too.
Well, I'm glad you clarified, because then I asked you what's your favorite form of information, and you did emphasize reading was a favorite form.
Yeah.
So I want to go into poetry, because I was amazed by you reciting your grandfather's poems, and I wanted to go into some of this thing on printed word. But I wanted to know if you could tell me, maybe three authors or books that had an impact on you growing up. Is there any that
Growing
really,
up?
Yeah, and they don't
Yeah,
even.
actually. I mean, that's especially having a father. I think we touched on it. My dad was an English professor, and
Yeah.
so I mean, I was surrounded by it. You'll appreciate this. Probably one of the and I read it way younger than I understood it. James Joyce, Portrait of the Artist of a Young Man.
Okay.
That was a huge influence on me.
And that was because the teacher told you, or on your own?
On my own. That was
Yeah.
way before. Yeah, that was that. You know, they don't assign that until high school. I must have read
Yeah.
that when I was like 10 or 11.
Yep. Yep.
I attempted Finnegan's Wake at one point, but I don't think I actually got all the way through it. I was way too young for that. I have yet to go back and reread that. Another one, huge when I was young, an author named Gene Wolfe.
Yep.
He wrote a series, and I actually just reread it. So this cat here, say hi to Zala.
Hello.
He decided to start pulling books off shelves. So he pulled a bunch of books off the shelf, and it happened to be the science fiction shelf, and he pulled out the Gene Wolfe books, and I actually sat down and reread them, about a month or two ago. I hadn't read them since I was probably 14. So that was huge. The Shadow of the Torturer was the first book that I read. And that series was pretty, it made a big impact on me when I was pretty young. Ray Bradbury, actually, probably before that, I remember reading The Halloween Tree and just being absolutely blown away. And, I mean, there was, that's hard to break down just three.
That's good. That's a good start. In fact, Ray wrote Fahrenheit 5 blocks from where I'm sitting. I can show you the house where he wrote it. The lot. They tore the house down right down the street. He was doing that in Venice, California. And I actually I've talked to Ray a couple times before he died. One time I says, "Have you ever read Finnegan's Wake?" And he says, I got it on my shelf. What do I do now? And I said, contemplate it. but the only way you can read Finnegan's Wake in reality is out loud with a group of people. So it is like a hoot, or it's like going to a Zappa show where every doofusy white guy is singing every lyric in your face, And I love it. I mean, I love the camaraderie of that. It's like a church choir,
Right.
You're all singing together. But that's
one other book that I should definitely mention, that's not so much when I was young, but younger, so probably read it first time in my early 20s. Book called The Quark and the Jaguar.
Yeah.
By Murray Gell-Mann.
Yeah.
Who was probably one of the smartest human beings to ever live on this planet.
Well, he got the word quark from Finnegan's Wake.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's really good. But is that fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
That's nonfiction. Yeah.
But it's still, you asked what was important, it had shaped my life, and that one absolutely, for sure, shifted my worldview in a way no other book has.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because here's my favorite Mallarmé quote. Everything in the world exists to end in a book. And it's a funny phenomenon because, Frank lists all these people that influenced him on Freak Out, and some of them are writers. James Joyce, Ferlinghetti, Bram Stoker, and Stoker, and he had three sci-fi writers: Theodore Sturgeon, Cordwainer Smith, and Robert Schechter. And you're saying Gene Wolfe is sci-fi, right?
Yeah, I mean roughly. I mean he's an interesting guy. I mean I actually, because when I was young I read the books. I didn't know anything about him. I just read them and liked them. When I went through and reread them about a month or so ago, I actually looked him up, and there's all sorts of because as I was going through the book, I was picking up all of these things that as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid, I didn't understand. But there's a bit. It's not intended to be a strict allegory the way C.S. Lewis's science fiction stuff was.
I see.
But there's definitely an element of Christian mythology throughout the books. But also what's really interesting is that that's what started is he pulled from so many different mythologies, where without going too far into it, the context of the book is it's the main character exists in a future, it's Earth, but it's so far in the future that the sun has started to go red giant. So but every single thing and place and river and name the name is pulled from some mythology, whether it's Norse, Christian, Greek, Roman, so the idea that these long forgotten origins, pass on through to these massively later generations. So
Yes.
anyways, that was kind of interesting, but it was something I didn't pick up the first time. I just took the name as, okay, that's what they called that river. I didn't really think that I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Gyol, is Gyal is what the river is called in the book, which is actually, also I can't pronounce it, it is a river in Norse mythology.
Amazing.
So,
because that's the funniest thing about Finnegan's Wake to me is he lists 1,500 river names in the book just to teach people rivers' names. He just throws them in so he can say, "Hey, I'm teaching you rivers' names." But there are two things. Theodore Sturgeon's book, More Than Human, was Frank's favorite book and Phil Lesch's favorite book.
interesting.
And they asked people, what's the greatest era of science fiction writing? The 20s, the 40s, the 60s, 80s. And the answer is when you're a teenager. Which I think is the same for music. It's basically you get your chops, for what touches you, and then it holds on for the rest of your career. There's not much you can grow and change, but
Well, I mean, certainly with music, there's things that I still hold on to very, very strongly from those early years. But in reading, what's interesting is I almost never read fiction anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost always nonfiction now.
Yeah.
People like Philip Gorevich and Murray Gell-Mann and Barbara Tuchman and Karen Armstrong's another good one.
Wow, that's cool. So that's exactly where I want to go. The other thing that I liked what you said was, I says, if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die? Now, most people answer, Conrad, you did a good job. I was like, okay, I've heard that a million times, but whatever, I want him to apologize to me. But you said God doesn't exist. Next question. Then you said that. So I wanted you to hear out Harold Bloom for 1 second and get a reaction to that. Do you believe in God? Harold Bloom says, my attitude towards Yahweh is that I don't like him and I don't trust him and I wish he would go away, but I know he won't because he's built into the language. As Nietzsche said, he's part of the way we think. As soon as you use a verb involving being, you're in trouble. So your reaction in that thing, he's built into the language. And I mean, you don't even have to say the key. It's this idea of God is built into the language. Yeah.
Well, it's built into our culture. Language maybe. That's a different way of putting it. But in terms of phrase, I've had people say to me before, like if I'm having this discussion about being an atheist or whatever, and they say and I stub my toe, I go, oh my fucking God, that hurt. You know, like, oh, see, you just referenced God. You must, like, no, that part is part of our language. That is our expression that, right. I could have said, by Jove's angry witness. I mean,
Dude, that's that outtake. Have you seen? You must have, or I hope you've seen the outtake of Frank doing "Keep It Greasy," the sausage line, for like 1 minute, and he's in front of the microphone, and you just see Frank's face in the studio, and he laughs, and the engineer says, "Oh, I didn't get that. Let's do that again." He says, "You fucking Hollywood engineers, though, I only laugh once a year, and you miss getting it." Because I think that's one of the keys to Frank in Joe's Garage is that he's sincerely laughing. Those are right. He's cracking himself up. But then Frank, all within this 1 minute, he says, well, God probably didn't want it in there anyways. Now, to me, that's like him and Louis Buñuel, or Thank God I'm an Atheist. They are so deep into being raised Roman Catholic that they'll never be able to erase it, even though they say they don't believe in God. Because I think Frank did believe in God in a way, in that way you're raised a Catholic and you can't. He's actually in the book, Once a Catholic. The guy who wrote that with Scorsese, Frank, all these people who were once a Catholic, was the guy who co-wrote Frank's book with him.
Right. So
it is a funny phenomenon that, But you were more raised Unitarian anyway, right?
Well, I wasn't raised Unitarian. I mean, we went to a Unitarian church, right. But it was not like... Right. It was a social occasion, 100%. There was never any,
I got it. Sorry about that.
Yeah. But it was interesting, and I think I mentioned in the last interview, like walking into the Sunday school and having this banner around the top edge of the room with every deity you can imagine, and that paints a very different picture for a kid. So
here is. The extension of that. So it's basically, we're talking about words now, because I'm slowly leading into poetry. But here's a quote from McLuhan, and I'm going to tell you what I think it means, and then you tell me what you think it means. I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but he's basically saying everybody experiences far more than they understand. Yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior. My think is that he's saying if the kid comes in from the cold, the parent goes, don't touch the stove, that will burn your hand. That's experience. The parent's approach could be, let me teach you the dynamics of heat. This is understanding. You can get really close to the stove, rub your hands together, and get your hands warm. So I think Marshall's saying a little more that understanding should shape our behavior, but experience shapes our behavior more. And I can read the quote again if you want.
No, I mean, I'm not sure what there is to discuss. I mean, it seems pretty clear if you look at human behavior in general that he's correct. I mean, it is... Understanding comes after the experience, I think, and it is good, in fact, to, understand that, the dynamics of heat, as you used that as an example. But it is experience that tells me, ow, that fucking hurt when I touched it. That's what we remember. And we are thinking creatures after. We are still underneath. There is that autonomous wiring that's really what drives us. And we have the capability to override that instinctual behavior. But for example, so I'm surrounded by cats right now. There are 5 of them here within, 10 feet. Yeah. There's one cat, we have 6, who basically lives her life in anxiety. And the other cats see her and chase her because she's acting like prey, so therefore she's prey. And even though there's the experience, right? And I try to get them to understand that they should not chase Wesa, but they still react like, a cat would. So, we still have that wiring.
Right.
And it's just a matter of how capable are we of, how many times have we, as people, had a friend and we've said, especially if it's a guy, say, okay, that guy thinks with his dick.
Yeah.
And he can't, keep himself from getting into fucked up situations because his dick is leading him down. That's exactly that, right? That's not understanding. That's purely, the autonomous wiring, the animal in us.
It's really good, Conrad. I appreciate your concise and articulate. And I wanted to jump into T.S. Eliot and poetry, because Eliot said they had the experience but missed the meaning. And how that natural, or do we always avoid that? Like, is the cat doing that consciously to get the attention of the other cats and have excitement? Or I know the Krasner quote is, he went to his guru and says, "Why is there evil in the world?" And the guru said, "To thicken the plot." or T.S. Eliot said, poetry can communicate before it's understood.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like the example I think I mentioned, the first time I saw my grandfather read poetry, that the language really affected me, but I didn't understand really what he was saying. I mean, it was, he's talking about complex, social dynamics and, the labor movement. At 5, I don't get that. But the words were clearly powerful enough to really leave an impression.
Now that's sure. John Beecher.
Yes.
Wow, I was really moved by that, reciting his poem. He's on your dad's side or your mom's side?
Mom's side.
Mom's side. Okay, let's go into that. What's the function of poetry?
Expression.
And so, this is Gary Snyder. I'm curious your thought. My task as a poet entails the work of seeing the world without language, then bringing that seeing into language.
You don't have a task as a poet. That's fucking retarded. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the guy, but come on. It's like there's the embiggening of self. Like, my task is to do. No, it isn't. You write words, and sometimes maybe they're beautiful words, and maybe they import this really important message. And but the task? Who tasked you? Who said you had to do? Like, that's just such a bizarre way to think about things for me. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, what I love about you, Conrad, is you're a good thinker, but you will express it. You use the word arrogant in the first one. I mean, I've got to interject this. Who wrote the YouTube blurb on your the show mores? That blurb should be on a Zap T-shirt. My question is, and we'll just refer people to. Is it on? No, it's not on every video, but it is.
It's on every video.
Okay, it's on every video. Just look at the show more. Do you have any sense that YouTube would tell you, "Oh, we're going to shut your channel down," or have you gotten any feedback, or does it just empower what they're doing? Any thoughts?
No, it was what YouTube has changed their algorithm again, and so that just to sort of inform our viewers is so that the blurb that I put on all of our videos is basically using as many swear words as possible in as short a space as possible, because YouTube will now put ads on videos without your permission.
Yeah.
And in our case, because we are playing somebody else's music, that money should go to Universal Music Group. They don't pay them either. They just hold on to that money. And it's granted, we're talking, millions of a fucking cent, for Christ's sakes. But the point is they're doing it, and it's more I don't want people Like, if I'm trying to share a video, I don't want them to have to sit through an ad first. I want to show them the fucking video.
Yeah.
So the actual language from YouTube is they say they have the right to put ads on it as long as they feel the content is appropriate for their advertisers. So my job is, or what I felt was my job, was to make that inappropriate as possible by putting as many cunt, fuck, assholes as I could in the description, right? And this is all just, you can go to the our YouTube page and read actually, this whole thing. But now, once your video gets past a certain number of views, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? They don't give a shit. They're going to run, because now, ooh, this is popular. We're going to run an ad on it. So, like, for example, I was sharing Frank's version of Cocksucker's Ball with somebody the other day. Right?
Yeah.
If there's ever a video that you don't fucking think is really fucking appropriate for, your family advertising, it would be Cocksucker's Ball.
By the Clovers. No,
right, originally, yeah.
It's a bootleg. It was never really officially released.
Right. So anyway, but so that that video has fucking ads on it. Right? So, obviously they don't really give a shit about whether the content is appropriate for their advertisers or not. Once it hits a certain number of views, they start showing ads. So on our videos, and I don't know where the cutoff point is. I don't know whether it's 3,000 or 5,000 views or something like that. But any of our videos that have, a substantial amount of views, like our version of Black Page, number 1 and number 2, Zombie Wolf, I think, has a bunch. Doesn't matter what I write. They still run ads on it. So,
wow.
Fuckers.
Yeah, when people are on my channel, sometimes they go, "Is it all right if I say fucker?" And I go, "Of course." This is quite amazing. We are live across the world right now, and when we're done, it's up forever. In that, there's no such. I mean, that's pretty cool in that regard.
Right. I mean, that's, it's the sort of the difficult part for me to swallow about YouTube is that, it is this amazing resource.
Yeah.
And I use it all the time for discovering new music and researching stuff, and, not intellectual stuff, researching music and finding, that kind of stuff. But what used to be sort of this, beautiful open place is now just, YouTube is going over the top with their advertising, man. It's everything. Yeah. Like, you can't watch anything longer than 3 minutes without getting interrupted with, like, I was watching some piece of music that was really moving, really, like this awesome piece of music, but it's like 6 or 7 minutes long. Halfway through, bang, you're in an ad. Yeah. Like, way to fucking choke me, man.
Yeah. No, it's a horrible phenomenon, and I want to compliment you also for being such a good listener, because most people hear that Gary Snyder quote and they just hear the second part. They didn't hear the word "my task." Now, the other one that I love to get opinions on is Paul Schrader, the writer for Taxi Driver, filmmaker, and he said, "My job as an artist is to attempt to sell out but fail." Now, a lot of people go, "Oh, I love that." And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's like, my art is so pure. I tried to sell out, but I failed.
Yeah, that could, that certainly could qualify as a bit arrogant. And again, my job as an artist, like, who do you work for?
Well, he worked for Marty Scorsese a lot of his career, but now he's on his own. But it is interesting because it is my question. The oldest question I got, which is from Kristen McKenna, a great writer, is what's more important, conviction or compromise? I probably asked you it in part 1, and you probably said it depends. It's what context are we talking here, Gerry? but my one person after 20 years said depends on what you mean by important. So again, the emphasis most people hearing, what's more important, conviction or compromise, they grab onto that dichotomy. Is it this or that? They don't go on into the first word. What is important?
Yeah, and I think we had talked. Sorry, I keep fucking with my earbud. I'm sure that it'd come up at some point, right? That you're presenting with an either-or decision for something that isn't an either-or reality.
It's a false dichotomy. Most people go, I'm not into either, or a lot of people go, I'm not into either mores. I'm like, dude, I'm just doing a prompt to get us to discuss. You don't have to answer the question. But here's the Leo Bersani just died about a year ago. He studied Mallarmé, the symbolist poet. He said, the very crisis which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. Now, there's a few words in there we could debate, but the essence of the quote, the very crises or the very act of writing poetry sustains poetic composition. Any thoughts on that idea?
So you're saying he's basically saying that the starving musician makes better music.
Well, I don't know. That's why I ask people.
I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like he's saying to me.
Yeah.
And, sure, you can always find anecdotal examples of that, right? Where people, wrote this amazing music, right? Using music as an example. And then they got super popular and then their shit sucked.
Yeah.
Finley Quay is one of my favorite artists for one album. And he did this amazing fucking record. And everything else after that sucked.
Wow.
And I don't know why that is. I mean, I know he had some personal issues. I don't know a lot about the guy, but he ended up not in a good place, and I think he actually ended up in jail. But his first album, fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Especially at the time. I think it probably came out in 1996 or 97 or something like that.
Well, I'll definitely look him up, but it sounds like, Frank's obsessed with these shags. I don't know your opinion on the shags. But I think
that, for fuck's sake.
The back when whatever label re-released the album, they put on the back of the Shags album Bonnie Raitt, Elvis Costello, Carla Bay, and Frank Zappa's quotes to push this album. And Frank's quote was even better than the Beatles even today. And did they know what they were doing when they were making their music? Their dad just sort of forced them into the studio and said, play, and supposedly they wrote it out or knew what they were doing. And then the engineer said, dude, don't you want them to practice first? And the dad went, no, I want to get them while they're hot. and then Morgan, Matson Morgan was here in my house, and he goes, you got to play the Shags for me. I played it. And he goes, does the drummer think she has a groove, or is she purposely playing bad?
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on the Shags. I mean, it's a gag as far as I'm concerned, and the people that enjoy it just for the sheer fuck uppery of it. I mean, there's something to be said for that, right? I mean, it's
No, that's fine. But go ahead.
There's a guy that I worked with. Unfortunately, he just passed away a few months ago. A guy named Johnny Saris. And he was a local Madison, Wisconsin guy for, most of his life, and he played in a local rock band called the Blue Herons, which is totally straight MC5 kind of, dirty, grungy, and Johnny came over to do a song with my original project, Kicksville, and part of the reason we brought him over is he also, among his many other things, he had an obsession with Charlie Manson, and we wrote a song called Happy Charlie.
Yeah.
Which wasn't really about Charlie Manson, but in any case, we brought Johnny in, and he did some background talking about Charlie, and proceeded to get just absolutely fucking hammered on Blatt's beer. I don't know if you've ever had Blatt's beer, but it's fucking disgusting. And Johnny must have drank like 12 or 14 of those fucking things, and then started playing guitar, and it was fucking awful. Oh my god, it was so fucking bad. But it was like so punk rock and so much fun that we actually it was a big writing session, so we all kind of jumped in
Yeah.
And the drummer for Kicksville's was the original drummer for the Furious Bongos. His name's Lou Calderola. Lou is an amazing drummer and all sorts of wonderfulness, and been a friend of mine since I was 16. But he does not like punk rock. He does not get it. Just does not get it. So after Johnny staggered around and we jammed for a while, Lou came downstairs. It was like, that's the worst fucking thing I've done since I was 14 years old. Jesus, that was awful. But we ended up making a song out of it. Yeah. And it's called Johnny's on Smack. Yeah. And it is literally Tone Deaf, who's the guy singing on it, like screaming in Johnny's face at him, like, you can't fucking sing, you suck.
Yeah.
And Johnny's going, yeah, man, this is awesome. And it was so bad that when I went back to do the editing, I was like, okay, Lou, I want you to help me with this. I want you to go through and I want you to find Johnny's most awful bits. Yeah. And Lou went down, we found the most awful bits, and we used those for the guitar solo. Yeah. So, I mean, there is something to be said for that kind of approach sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's outsider music in the long run. It's, Daniel Johnston, Wildman Fisher, I call him the godfather of it all, is Wildman Fisher. But there's many artists, Wesley Willis, that are sort of in that category called outsider music. Yeah. And it's like McLuhan said, a great one, you can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital. But I'm curious about political poetry, because I'm about to do this event on poetry as political activism, and I wanted to. You
should definitely include some John Beecher in there.
Well, that's I want to bring that up. Does for me, the Berrigans is what politicized the Berrigan brothers' anti-war poetry in the 60s is what made me anti-war and pacifist. But I'm curious your thoughts on agenda poetry, or poetry, that has a message, and is your, you can go from the aspect of at 5 you're hearing your grandfather's poetry, and he's listed as an activist in Wikipedia. Yeah. So,
well, that was his prime. I mean, that's where he started.
Yeah.
The poetry was just an accident more than anything else, and he was a writer and continued that, but it didn't start with the words. It started with the act. That was first. Right.
But is it effective? Cindy Sheehan, who protested.
All I can say is it was effective for me. Yeah. And there are other people who have read it and seen it, and specifically talking about my grandfather's poetry, that is effective. And I think one of the important things, and this speaks to the larger sort of body of activist poetry. And this is personal aesthetic choice, and I do think there is some validity beyond just that, but you can't tell people what to do. Yeah. Right? That's not really how you convince somebody to do something. You have to present a story and tell it in such a way that at the end of the story, people see your perspective. If I just come out and say, you shouldn't kill people, right? Yeah. The words should, or you should not, or that doesn't belong, and that's not really going to convince anybody, and it makes for a great rock song, right? Come on, people, da da da, like. But that's not really poetry in the way that my grandfather was extremely good at it, right? Where he never preached, he never said you should do stuff. He just wrote a thing, and if you read all of the words carefully, you come to the inescapable conclusion at the end that, okay, the Pyres of the Dead. The first time I read that, I went, holy shit, or the "and ever the pyres of the dead burn thick" is the full name of the poem. And you read the first 4 lines, and if that doesn't convince you, you're beyond saving.
Yeah.
Never once does he say, "You should do this."
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was one of the ones I had spewed at you on the last one, but
Well, it's really funny because 2 things. Cindy Sheehan was protesting the war in front of Bush's house, and she says, "We're preaching to the choir, and there ain't even a choir." And so, it's a tough thing. Godard told Michael Moore at Cannes Film Festival for Fahrenheit 9/11, he says, "Your film is going to help Bush get elected." Now, it didn't help Bush get elected per se, but it galvanized pro-Bushers. So it's sort of like this agenda. Anything with agenda is funny. You get to the most influential political it's a fake doc of all time, film is Battle of Algiers. Battle of Algiers was used by Bush and his cronies to teach them how to deal with uprisings, and it was used by the Irish and the Black Panthers to train their people how to have an uprising.
right.
So there's something in the middle where you don't, like, your should and gotta wordage is great, because I always say, people go, "You should do this," or "You gotta do this." I goes, there's no shoulds and there's no gottas. You're just, back to Mallarmé, he said, to suggest is to create, to define is to kill. But here's a couple just quotes about political poetry, and if any thoughts come up. This is Robert Frost. "Poetry is about the grief. Politics is about the grievance."
Sure. It's these kinds of statements from people are always, and we all do this, myself included. Make these statements like that. It doesn't make. It's a nice combination of words.
Right. That's what I'm going back to the wordage thing. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm glad. But Frost said something in that regard once. They said, "Could you explain this poem?" And he goes, "You mean you want me to say it worse?"
I like that.
I like Frank because Frank admitted he was a poet in that Detroit interview from like many years ago. He says, "I am a poet," but basically, he's a lyricist, and there's a fine line between lyricist and poet. And Frank is good at explaining his lyrics, but he also is a good storyteller, and he is also just telling things, and then you interpret it the way you want. Here's Jonas Mika's quote: "You don't have to be a communist to be anti-capitalist. It's enough to be a poet."
Not sure what A has to do with B, but okay.
Okay, and here's Robert Duncan. "When philosophy raised the dialectic, a debate toward what is called truth, poetry raised the theater, a drama of truth."
What?
I think he's saying more. It's the poetry is more about theater than it is about defining truth.
Maybe, sure. It's interesting. I mean, this is goes back. It's the old Taoist idea of the uncarved block, right? Like this, or actually, this is really more about the 10,000 things. That this is by putting a name to it and defining it, you're creating this arbitrary thing that didn't actually really exist. And sometimes when these statements like this, these grand things are I'll go back to the Frost quote about, do you want me to say this worse?
Yeah, but you want me to say it worse? It's amazing. Because, that's
that's like the best description I could think, like if you want to describe what poetry is, I'm going to say something in this way, and, if I have to explain it, it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
I don't know,
but it's funny because I'm interested in your bringing up the Bloom County comic,
Right.
you know, and I was really intrigued by the guy who created that. I didn't really know. I've never really followed him and didn't know him, but I think that was the line you were kind of evoking. The meaning of life is to give life meaning.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you, Conrad? 'Cause-
I could say it worse.
Please do. I'm suss it out. Why did
Well, I
it?
mean, it's. I mean, that to me, because especially given my philosophical context as an atheist, the only reason. I mean, we're not here for a reason, right? So, what the fuck? What do we do? Let's do what we can to make this, as pleasant an experience for everybody involved.
Right.
And by giving life meaning, I am actually giving meaning to something that was random, because I was born the series of historical accidents that led to my birth. There's no deep purpose behind that, and to think that there is arrogance. And so what the fuck can I do? Well, I'll see. I can rescue cats. I can make sure that my wife is taken care of, and I do everything I can to support her and her work. And she's been fighting a chronic illness for her whole life, and trying to help her with that. That gives my life meaning. That's far more important than going to church and praising God. Fuck.
Amazing, because this is Anthony Hopkins was in New York Times Sunday Magazine last week, and they go, "Do you think your life has had meaning?" And this is what he said: "The only meaning I can put to it is that everything I sought and yearned for found me. I didn't find it; it came to me." I'm curious your thoughts on that. Is meaning in life for you a little more either of those ways? I didn't find it; it came to me. Or did you see?
Anthony Hopkins was very lucky then.
Yeah.
Like maybe think of a long time ago, I saw Tommy Lee Jones on Inside the Actor Studio.
Yeah.
And he said that he'd kind of fallen into acting almost by accident, and when he got out of college, he got work right away. He immediately started working as an actor full time right out of the gate. And he looks out at the audience. He goes, "I know most of you are going to hate me for that," but it came to him. It didn't come to most other people.
Right.
They had to fight and claw for every gig, and So for example. From personal experience, I know my own career has been very little has come to me. I've had to go out and find everything almost. I've been very, I'm not unlucky, but this, especially music business, and acting, it's very much, even worse in some respects, that it's not just about being good. It's about being in the right place at the right time. It's about a certain amount of luck. It's about a lot of things that have nothing to do with how well I can play bass.
Yeah.
And along the way, there are a few opportunities that came along that I didn't see them for what they were, and in one case where a thing came to me, I was not musically mature enough to really take advantage of it. Like when I got the gig with Mick Fleetwood, that's specifically, that could have opened the door for me having a much larger career as a hired bass player.
How long did that last?
It lasted until Ron Thompson fucked it up, the guitar player. It was about a year and a half. Yeah. And it was just, I got the gig completely by accident. I was actually working monitors. Mick Fleetwood opened up, I was living around D.C. Mick Fleetwood opened up a club in Alexandria, and my buddy became the production manager and in-house sound guy. So he brought me in, and I was actually running monitors there. And Mick had a side project called the Blue Whale. And the bass player apparently had a heroin problem and missed the plane, and then missed the second plane. So remember, Mick was standing on stage like, oh, fuck, you know, what am I going to do? I need a bass player. And I raised my hand. I'm like, I'm a bass player. So I learned their set in, you know, about 2 hours. I mean, it's all blues. But, you know, at the time I was 23, 24, and all hopped up on Billy Sheehan and Jeff Berlin and all of these, you know, and that is not what the old British blues guy wants to hear from the bass player.
What a trip, Conrad, because one of my heroes is Peter Green,
Right.
you know, and his bass player who plays on, you know, Erroneous is Frank got Erroneous from, I think, hearing End of the Game by Peter Green.
Huh.
You know, the bass player what's he play on, like Waka Jawaka or Grandma's Zulu? One of those.
Can't remember.
One of those the Zappa bass players with the one name is the guy from. So what a weird world, because I was wondering how many lessons did you take with Chad and how many with Arthur, and what did you get from them? Were they helpful?
Well, the Arthur, that was for me was studying arranging. It wasn't even necessarily looking at Frank, but it was about trying to study learn more about arranging, and it wasn't just Arthur's experience with Frank. It was, you know, his work after with Giorgio Moroder and even Billy Idol and stuff. So, you know, that was a really interesting thing. It was also really cool because that was just before and leading up to the early stage of the Furious Bongos, and having Arthur's insights into not just Frank's music, but how Frank ran rehearsals, how he set up the learning process for people to make them, you know, have a chance. Because, you know, like one of the first things Arthur talked about is that, you know, if you've got a whole bunch of material that you need the band to learn, and some of it's really, really fucking hard, and some of it is really not, you don't learn all the easy shit first and save Inca Roads and Black Page for the end. Right? You do a hard one and you do an easy one. You do a hard one and an easy one. You know, so you kind of break it up and you give people this certain sense of satisfaction because, hey, I did that one really well. Okay, I'm going to work on this really hard one, and it's going to suck for, you know, the first week of rehearsals. So that was, you know, and so it was about 1.5 years with Arthur. With Chad, it was about 6 months. And that ultimately, I mean, that led to Chad becoming part of the Furious Bongos. And with Chad, it wasn't again, had really nothing specifically to do with Frank. It was getting more and more comfortable understanding some of the really deeper rhythmic aspects. And also, you know, for me as a bass player, like understanding how to play with a drummer who's going that sideways, rhythmically speaking, and still maintaining that pulse. You know, like I studied with Brian Beller for a little while too, with sort of the similar kind of idea. He was the bass player for the Aristocrats. And you know, I said, you know, Brian, you know, how do you deal with it when you're playing with a drummer like Marco Miniman, who can like, you know, just do these ridiculous things, and you know, how do you stay on point? And he said, man, you know, the reality is when you're talking about a drummer like Marco or Terry Bozzio or Vinny or Chad, if they want to turn you around, they can. If they want to lose you, they can. You just have to hope that they use their powers for good. So studying with Chad was more about really, you know, appreciating that and being able to play through things like, so the bass line for the Black Page #1 is very simple, right? But it's these long notes with this rhythmic spasm in between. And I have to hit that downbeat just so with all of this shit going on in between. So how do you sort of keep one ear on the pulse and one ear on the craziness and still come out in the right place? So that's what I studied with Chad.
Really well set up. It really gave me a picture of how you worked with all three of those. And I have to go back to Georgia Moroder's name for a second. Do you know when Bob Dylan came to visit Frank and ask him to produce one of his albums? Frank, at the end of the session, said, I know what I'll do. I'll have Georgia Moroder lay a synthesizer track and you can blow harmonica over it. Then talk about pets. Then Frank's dog barked at Bob, and Frank went, don't worry, he only barks at Christians. So I spoke with them. Well, let's stay on the political poetry. We got
because there was a
tangent for a second, but I had a couple questions in that regard. What's the difference between revolution and rebellion?
I mean, it's a complicated question depending on how you define the words, right? You know, how do you define revolution? Are we talking an armed insurrection?
Yeah, I mean, again, you put it in the context you want. Whatever you want to call revolution, yeah.
So if we're framing it that way, then if a revolution is, you know, an armed uprising, rebellion is just a simple act of resisting.
Yeah.
Whereas revolution, you know, if that's how you want to define it, you know, but also you could be revolutionary musician like Frank, and it has absolutely nothing, you know, like, so he wasn't just rebelling, right? Like the punk rock movement was rebelling.
Yeah.
Frank was revolutionary.
Really good. That's a good way. You pulled the political poetry section back to Frank. Really good, Conrad. Beautiful. Because here's the next one. What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
I mean, again, using a technical... What are you doing, cat? Speaking of cats.
Yo, cat.
Okay, I wish I could share a picture of this with you guys, but one of the other cats, his name's Ia, which is Nigerian for life. He's got these little... I've got a paper bag on the floor here, and he's just continually, like, he's sticking his head into it. It's just perfectly sized that when he sits back up, it's wearing it like a fucking dunce cap. And he does this, like, all the time. Like, it's a fun little game he does. This is not just a cat playing with a bag. He puts on the dunce hat, and he walks around with it. It's fucking hilarious. Anyway.
But is his name I-A, the letter I, the letter A?
A-Y-E.
Oh, A-Y-E, but it's pronounced I-A.
I-A.
Wow. That's pretty good. But
yeah, I think it's I can't remember it's Igbo, I think. It's either Igbo or one of the other ethnic Nigerian languages.
Yeah. I need that. So, but I mean, in basic, rights or responsibilities, what's the basic difference? Yeah.
I mean, a right is something that is... I mean, I have the right to say whatever I want.
Yeah.
I have the responsibility to be careful about what I say in certain circumstances.
Yeah. Really good. This is Utah Phillips says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Anarchy is... It's a lovely idea. Doesn't work. People are assholes. You know,
I mean, we had a sort of victory yesterday. It's sort of the only victory we had in years. I mean, it goes to this etymology breakdown of the word freedom is giving oneself one's own laws. Same thing Utah said anarchy is, making one's rules for one's own self. What does freedom mean to you now?
Hold on a second. I am going to answer that for you in a way you might not expect. It's going to take me a second. Hold on. This one I do not have memorized. There's a John Beecher poem called Freedom.
Yeah.
Just got to find the text. Hold on. Looking.
And this grandfather of yours died in 1980.
Yeah.
So he lived a pretty long life. You got to know him.
A little bit. I mean, he was very separated from the family for a long time because we were on the East Coast and he was in California for a while, and then he was gallivanting around the country, and he ended up in North Carolina. I do remember going down to visit him when he was in North Carolina at one point, but I must have been really young. We are still waiting for the answer. What I mean by the answer is not just something that satisfies your mind so you stop thinking about the problem and feel comfortable again, but I mean an answer that takes a hold of you, that won't leave you alone, that makes you act its way, that won't let you act any other way, that you go to sleep with and wake up with, and it hasn't changed. Freedom. The word freedom. Freedom, the word. A good word, freedom. But who using it means it? What we've got now is half the answer. And where an answer is concerned, a half's worse than none. Freedom. I have seen men fighting for their freedom here in America, fighting to make the law mean what the law says, fighting to make the Bill of Rights mean what the Bill of Rights says. These are the things we can't help remembering. These are the things that give us pause. The beaten picket at the mill gate, the tear gas and the riot squad, the kneeling children in the berry fields, the slums, the slums upon slums upon slums upon slums, and nothing really done. Freedom here? What freedom? Whose freedom? When freedom? The freedom of children to labor in the fields? The freedom of the tractor to plow under the sharecropper? That's not the freedom we mean to fight for. So,
wow, that answered the question well. Was there a half in there, a half truth? He said something half. Anyways.
Yeah, so what he's saying is what we've got now is half of the answer. And where an answer is concerned, a half is worse than none. Yeah.
Because McLuhan has this great line, a half of truth is still a lot of a truth. But I think the way your grandfather did was he laid his cards on the table very articulately and he didn't sort of flower this up in symbolism. He said it he told it as it is.
I mean, that's, part of one of the things that attracted me to his poetry when I first, that must have grabbed my attention when I was a kid, and then when I rediscovered it, much later, was the plain language.
Yeah.
It wasn't wrapped in this, T.S. Eliot sort of imagery. I remember I got in a actually really big argument with one of my brothers who was a huge T.S. Eliot fan, that, he was very down on because he's from my dad's side.
Yeah.
We're half brothers, so he's from my dad's side. So he was very much of the T.S. Eliot, D.H. Lawrence sort of field, and, where I much more appreciate the sort of traditional, plain language poetry. And there's especially when you're talking about political subjects, there is something very important about being direct, I think. And even when my grandfather did dip into sort of flowery, Shakespeare-y, in James Joycean kind of obfuscation, there's still a directness to it that isn't there in a lot of poetry. And that's, to me, why I think his poetry was so effective for me, and has, and when I have read it to other people and we've used it in the Kicksville material, it's resonated. Especially the fact, like that song, that poem "Freedom" was written in 1942.
Oh wow!
So
still valid today.
Unfortunately, great Phoebus Apollo, unbend your silver bow, for mankind is weary of the slaughter. The proud, the meek, the foolish, and the wise, the guilty and the innocent alike die beneath your vengeful shafts, and never is there an end to the hot blood smell.
Wow, that's another John Beecher?
And ever the pyres of the dead burn thick.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Beautiful. That it's, you know, I mean, there's some highfalutin language in there, right? So, great Phoebus Apollo unbend your silver bow is a reference to the Iliad, because at one point, I can't remember why he gets so pissed off, but Apollo gets really fucking pissed off, and he comes down and he fucking kills everybody, and he just fucking lays waste to the entire battlefield, and that's the silver bow. He's just, you know, so, you know, there's all of this extra, you know, imagery if you really want to go into it and dive into it. Another one that's, you know, especially talk about political, fuck, man, you know. He wrote this one just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's see if I can do this straight from memory. We dangled them upon the edge a week, letting them savor death, and then reprieved them from their jeopardy of space. The style is new. The abominations of his war moved Lincoln to unmanly tears. Perhaps he pondered scripture overmuch. We too bring God into our speeches. Fustian we spout as well, to cloak our naked sword in words of righteous tone. Small matter if the skeptical are unconvinced, we have the countervailing force to make them cringe. No power makes us stoop to parley. Proud as pterodactyls in their prime are we. Mighty as mammoths, whose unrivaled thews the tundra binds in ice perpetual.
Wow. Amazingly powerful words, and it's beautiful how you're able to recite them and not have the text in front of you, Conrad. Bravo. Bravo.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, for me, that's, you know, that's a piece called Bestride the Narrow World, which is also a Shakespearean reference to Julius Caesar. Well, I can't remember the full quote. I'll probably fuck it up, but it's, you know, man doth bestride the world like a colossus, and we petty men peep about his legs and die in dishonor, or something, you know. But that's where he's getting at with Bestride the Narrow World, and you know, that's an example where the flowery language, you know, not many people know what fustian means.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you can turn around and make it just absolutely plain in a way that is even more powerful. It's another one, so I could do this one from memory. The burnt black bodies of the homeless were found in the embers of the Negro church into which they had crept to sleep on the floor. The wails of the people carried down the valley and reached the ears of the rich on the mountain like the distant whistle of a fast train coming.
Wow.
And that was written in 1932. You know, so that's, you know, the others. There's another one. It's really makes me fucking angry to a certain extent that so much of his work is still so fucking relevant and powerful.
Yeah.
Let's see if I should be able to do this one mostly from memory. The lifted lamp is guttering, near spent its fuel. Oh, God damn it! No, I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to have to read it. The lifted lamp is guttering, near spent its fuel. Double barred the golden door, which, when it opens on a chain. Where throngs poured through, police interrogate each refugee, admitting but the few who pass security and kiss the book. Would Juarez get a visa from the State Department? Would the FBI clear Dvorak? Deport the New World Symphony. Martí, the Cuban foe of imperialism? Lorca, the anti-fascist poet? These men were all subversive, as in earlier times Tom Paine, Pulaski, Lafayette. The authorities would surely bar such undesirables.
Wow. Tom Paine is the subject of a big essay by McLuhan, and Lorca is one of my heroes. That's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, that's, you know, that kind of poetry where, in none of those examples did he ever say, you should do this, you should love your fellow man and stop fighting, you know. Great Phoebus Apollo, unbend your silver bow, for mankind is weary of the slaughter. That's a lot more fucking powerful than saying, hey man, you shouldn't kill each other.
Yeah. But I'm curious, Conrad, this is the poet critic Helen Vendler. She just passed last year. She said, I write to explain things to myself. What do you think your John Beecher's motive was? What was his,
I mean, his motive was, he was trying to move people.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, I actually appreciate what she said, because that's when I do write, that's much more how I feel. It's I'm trying to explain something to myself. I'm not tasked with anything. I don't have a job. I am just trying to explain something, maybe to myself more than anything else.
But there's a little bit of a paradox there. Steve Martin loves to quote David Mamet. Art is a product of the unconscious mind. So, how conscious is John of his words and what he's putting down?
Very.
Yeah,
very.
But is there some unconsciousness to him? Because here's the other flip of that. Bertolt Brecht asked Charles Laughton, "Why do you act?" And Laughton said, "Because people don't know what they are like, and I think I can show them." Now that kind of sounds arrogant, but in a way, is that really, he's saying, you're like John is saying, I'm here to move you to do something, not just to move you. Isn't he really wanting to activate you?
I mean, John Beecher, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that was, he started as an activist, and for him, the writing was just an extension of that.
Yeah.
And, as an activist, it was also, you don't carry a sign, you go do shit. I mean, it was, sitting back and writing flowery poetry about, whether it's good or bad, about the war is not going to end the war. I need to go out and actually do something, and I don't have it in front of me. I'd have to go dig it out of a book, but there's one poem he'd written much later in his life when he was back, finally rehired at San Francisco State.
Well, it's interesting because along with this motive thing, I'm curious because when I asked you, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium. And I asked you, what does the base extend? And you said it's a tool. But in regards to that, I had a poet once said, what does the writing utensil extend for you in regards to writing your poetry? What humanness? And he said tears. And I was touched when you told me how you were moved by Peter Gabriel's Heroes song so much that it brought you to tears.
Yeah.
And I'm saying now, like they asked McLuhan, what does movies extend? What humanness? And most people say memory or the eyes. He said, well, it could extend your foot because you're traveling. So again, I'm going to ask you again, what is the musical instrument, the flute, you started with the bass, what humanness does it extend? Like a human sensorium, and then what does it extend for John? What's your guess on John?
I mean, for me, it's I never thought about it that way. Like that's I wouldn't even really know how to answer that question.
But it's funny because this tears thing, crying, the
well,
word
that's. I react really strongly to certain pieces of music, and the Peter Gabriel Heroes, that live version with the fucking string orchestra, that fucking gets me every time. It's almost always the things that get me there into that emotional space are things that are really very much rooted in the common human experience, whether it's pain or sadness or longing or one actually it just made me weep, and people are going to think it's average readers are going to think it's really fucking strange, but there's an Irish band called The Scratch, and they did a song called Shadow, and they had a guest vocalist, and her name is Loa, Oah. She is Irish via Sierra Leone. And man, when that song gets going at the end and she starts singing from that other place.
Yeah.
Man, that's that. And I did this, went into this deep dive. They're, currently been obsessed with the Scratch for the last couple of weeks. They're awesome. Most of their stuff is nothing like that. But they are super fucking fun. But that one song with that woman singing, fuck, man.
I'm going to look it up. What's the name of the song again?
Shadow.
Shadow, yeah. Well, that's a funny thing because it's often, fusing the dichotomy of life. You laugh and you cry. That's Joyce took the word laughter and added 2 letters and turned it into laugh tears.
Yeah.
So, he put an A and an S in there, which is metaphor.
There's another one that gets me every time. I mean, if you want, a list of songs that make me fucking cry. There's an artist, and I found her because we have the same last name. There's actually her stage name is Saint Clair. Saint Clair.
Wow.
And she did a 4-song album trying to deal with her father's death.
Yeah.
And especially movements 3 and 4 of that are incredibly touching. So much so that it almost makes me choke up a little bit just thinking about it.
Dude, I love. That's what I think is so important about music. Walter Pater saying that all art aspires to the condition of music. Poetry, architecture, painting, all wishes it could be as cool as music. Music. I mean, it's endless how it affects me and makes me cry. And we got about 10 more minutes here.
Yeah.
Conrad. I really appreciate your time. I wanted to ask you this one. I spoke with Michael Apted about 40 years ago, and I asked him, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in the 80s with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. And so Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. And I asked this question with a bias, but can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I think it's an important question, right? Because we're coming up, especially even outside just the idea of the medium of film, one of the problems with the society right now, global society right now, is we are expected to process information at this ridiculous rate, and we're not keeping up. And people, I say this all the time to even friends of mine who should know fucking better, but man, the media literacy is so fucking important.
Yeah.
And so few people understand it, or even what you mean by the phrase, right? They think, I watch CNN and BBC and, Fox, so I have... No, you don't. If you can't really look at a piece of reporting or an article, and you can't find these certain words, then you don't really understand. And you couple that fact that so few people have the required media literacy, and then that rate of information is just cranked up, that even people who are very literate or have a high degree of media literacy aren't able to keep up. So I don't know. I think it's a problem. We better figure it out. And it's something that the folks who are in power and who would like to remain in power, certain authoritarian fuckers, are taking advantage of.
Can humans literally multitask?
Yes.
Because I wanted to go back to what you just said, reminded me of TSA. I don't know if I explained this in the first one. TSA is tactile situation awareness, where a bomber is hit in the airplane and he doesn't have time to look at all his gauges and figure out what to do to save his life. So he's just got to act on, intuition and what to do. And one friend says that's what kids are nowadays, because I asked you about one of your band members, why doesn't she answer my emails? Fuck them all.
I was joking.
I know, but it's funny because I know when I talk to people, I got to go, you want to communicate the, which way do you best communicate? You got to ask them, because you can't assume, I'm just an email guy and that's it. But people are like, what's email? They don't even know. But tactile situation awareness is like, that's what kids are now. They can look at 4 screens and, eat and do this and that. And then they don't relate to one. Whereas my generation, we grew up and we related and identified with one medium, the telephone or the car, or the transistor radio, one at a time. So their ability is to process the big picture, back to the words you said in the first part, pattern recognition, and get comprehensive awareness. I'm not saying
I think one of the downsides of people absorbing that way is it's very superficial.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a deeper understanding of the things around them. And this particular band member in question.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what medium you try to reach her on her, she doesn't fucking respond.
Yeah.
I've tried all of them, and she'll get to you when she gets to you. I mean, that's
But then you adapt and you understand that's the process with her. See, that's
I mean, I have to, because one, I really like her, and she's an awesome person and a lovely musician. But I also need her because she is the percussionist in a Zappa project, and I need her to show up for the gig. So I have to be understanding, and I want to be, because she is a good human. She just doesn't respond to emails, phone calls, texts, Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger. I haven't tried Snapchat.
Blue sky. Okay, so what's the difference between art and science? Is there a difference?
Yes.
What is it? Or, I mean, how would you articulate?
I mean, that seems sort of... I'm trying to think of a worse way to describe it. I mean, art is art and science is science. I mean, there can be an art to certain sciences, but the science itself, like, we don't analyze the creators of music, for example. Don't typically, and not, there are, certainly serial composers and stuff, but for the most part, people don't write music based on research and the scientific method. They write a song or compose a piece of music, or they have a melody in their head, and whereas science is fucking science. I mean, there might be an art, like Einstein's use of visualization helped him crack relativity. It wasn't his training as a mathematician. It was his ability to visualize these things and have this, so there's absolutely an art to him getting those insights at the beginning, but that's, relativity wouldn't stand on its own just as this beautiful idea. It's had to be proven. And it took, decades for the other physicists to finally admit it.
Amazing, Conrad, because Einstein's on my list here. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science.
I mean, I think that's where he was, he was pulling those initial inspirations from, and in that respect, there is, certainly a lot of commonality between art and science. But in the practice of it, it is functionally different.
The practice is different. That's amazing, because here's Jean Cocteau, art is science made clear.
I don't know about that, but yeah, sure, that's cute.
And then here's this French historian. Science finds no truths. It discovers unknown facts that can be interpreted 1,000 ways.
Yeah, most of that's true. I don't know. It depends on the conclusion whether it can be interpreted 1,000 ways or not. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's it's there. I read a lot about most of the actual math is over my head, but I'm genuinely fascinated by this advanced mathematics and stuff, just the conceptual ideas of it, and a lot of it has to come from this intuition, and at the end of the day, you're not actually discovering something, you are uncovering something.
Uncovering, that's a good word.
That's most mathematicians I think or physicists would feel the same way. Like I didn't discover this new axiom, I just looked at the problem hard enough and I finally realized, like, oh look, here's this equation, or
Yeah.
I mean that's the idea of beauty in mathematical equations. That's there's a lot of language with art.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the allure for certain kinds of physics is the beauty of the equations. And some of it I can only take their word for it that a particular equation is beautiful, but something like E equals mc squared makes okay, there is a lot of information packed into a very, very tiny little package, and the implications of 3 letters and a power, that is amazing. So I can understand that being beautiful. Some of the more, look at string theory, and those equations are a lot more complicated, but you still have the same appreciation from the folks dealing with it, that we hope and think that this particular flavor of string theory, because there are many different versions, is the most beautiful, so that maybe nature is pointing us in that direction.
Yeah, biomimicry. But that's Frank loved the look of the black ink on the white paper. Just the look, let alone constructing this sound out of these notes. And then Beefheart said, music is black ants crawling on white paper. but what you said, I'm curious to consider what Thelonious Monk said. Music is math.
It is. I mean, there's... and I may be wrong about this, but if I'm pretty sure this is the case. There are only 2 kinds of prodigies. There's math prodigies and music prodigies. There is no other flavor. Like a true prodigy, like in the actual literal sense of that word. That's like a Mozart, somebody at 4 years old who's writing symphonies. And the same in the underlying structure of music is mathematical. I mean, there's no getting around that, right? It's all ratios and relationships. So, there's an undeniable connection, and that's part of the reason why, like just as in the abstract sense, why the idea of advanced mathematics has always been interesting. It's there is a commonality.
Well, this has been a real treat, Conrad. I want to close out with this one. And did you hear about the recent Brian Eno documentary? Every screening is different. So they put it up on a cloud, and then they shoot it into the movie theater. They pull it out of the cloud to the movie theater, and they put up a different edit with different, order in the footage or whatever, different footage. So it's quite a unique idea to have every screening different. But here's the quote that goes along with the movie that I'm curious if you could respond to. Play is how children learn. Art is how adults play.
I could agree with that to a certain extent. I think more adults need to play.
Hello. Well, you're in the great profession is you don't work music, you play music.
Yeah, there definitely. I have worked music before. That's for goddamn sure. Any working musician has been on those gigs. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is an amazing phenomenon, though, to use that verb, just overall.
Yeah. I mean, that guy's. He and there are a few other folks like him. Are just so fucking. I don't even know how to describe it. They're so much smarter than the rest of us. Like, I just don't even know how to like. I'm not a stupid person. I don't think I'm that smart. I was lucky I had parents that exposed me lots of things early, but I'm not. I'm no genius. Those guys are Brian Eno and even Byrne to a certain extent.
Well, it's funny because David Byrne's a McLuhan freak, and Eno, they used his line to sell the republication of the book. And Eno said, Marshall changed the world with one sentence. But I appreciate all these people we talked about, but I especially appreciate your time and energy here. Conrad, you're a really good listener. That's what I think. That's why you're a great musician, because most people don't realize music is half of it is listening. And I really appreciate that. And the way we talked at the end of part one was amazing, and hoping that someday we could do some sort of big Zappa event in the States where, people could share their interest in Frank in more ways than just a concert, and have it in an academic setting. And I still hope that can happen. And if not, I hope I can see your band sometime. I hope you come and play the West Coast.
I'd love to come out the West Coast. The problem is logistics. The other reality is I don't want to extend this beyond our 90 minutes too much, man. But financially speaking, I'm getting fucking pummeled on these bongos tours.
I know. You and Stinkfoot, I can't figure out how these people come up with the money to do these shows, but I'll tell you, it's a real treat, and I think you guys would be making Frank proud, because you, back to the Eno word, you include the playfulness of what Frank's music was about.
Well, that's the fucking point for me. I mean, that's always like, because we're not, or I'm not, and there's only one like real Zappa fanatic in the band.
Yeah.
It's about the fun and the challenge and the taking of the chances. Yeah. It's not like, I didn't start this because, oh my God, I love Frank Zappa so much, I want to do a tribute band. I mean, that was not the intent. Yeah. And it is about appreciating the fun, and something that I've always taken to heart is, you said Frank laughs once a year. Not true. When Ike Willis and Ray and Tunis were in the band, that was their job. Yeah. Make Frank laugh every night if they can. Yeah. And when you hear him cracking up, like so we added Drowning Witch to our set list on the last tour, which is we just put out a video for that. But when I was working on the arrangement, there are the two main published versions. There's the album version, and then there's version on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore. And the Can't Do That on Stage version anymore, at one point he starts cracking up. Yeah. And because he cracks up, the next cue is a measure late. But that's the published version, right? So as I was working on the arrangement, I was okay, so there's two measures there before we do the next thing. Well, in fact, there's really only one. It just happened to be that night somebody cracked him up and he couldn't help it and he started laughing. And the way Drowning Witch works, the live version, all of the little things that happen are based on something that Frank says. So until he says dangerous, you don't do the dangerous riff. Yeah. So if he's late, you wait. And, so it was only by going through and listening to a bunch of other bootlegs and stuff, that I figured, okay, so that was just that moment, that one night, he cracked up, and that added an extra measure. It's not canon. It's not part of the original arrangement. He just cracked up for a moment, So, I mean, that's the fun. That's what the gig's supposed to be about, man.
Is that the song where he uses a little laughing box? You hit... Yeah. Because I love that. But it reminds me of two Venetians that I see just riding my bike, which I'm about to go do along the beach, and I'll see him constantly, is Tommy Mars, who I hope if you come to Venice someday, you would love it, because Tommy is just so articulate about talking about Frank. He should be writing these liner notes once or twice in these reissues, because he's on the latest one. And he has so many great stories, and he's just such a down-to-earth, real guy. But Tommy, I hope you can come to Venice someday, and we'll talk with Tommy. But the other guy who lives in Venice is Warren Cucurullo, and his great line is in the Baby Snakes, where, he's backstage, and people are saying, they think Frank Zappa's a wild man. They don't realize that there's notes involved.
Yeah, Warren can go fuck himself.
Well, anyways, it's really been a pleasure, Conrad.
Yeah, man, this is very much a pleasure. I didn't even get a chance to flip the script on you and ask you to start quoting from Finnegan's Wake.
Well, I the best I can do is just say the word laugh tears, because it is a phenomenon. I mean, we could end with this question then. See, what he did was he culture jammed, or flipped out a word, laughter. So he took two letters, an A and an S, and turned it into laugh tears. So it really summarizes the whole book. It's like DNA. It's like you don't have to read the book. Just read one word, laugh tears. You laugh and you cry. That's the human condition. But those two letters he added are the letters that spell as, A-S, which is metaphor. So you go to McLuhan, who's manipulating satirized translation of the Wake, broke the Finnegan's Wake code. He said that this word sort of summarizes the Wake by saying McLuhan said all words are metaphoric. Then if all words are metaphoric, then what is the word literal a metaphor for?
You're stepping out of the metaphor.
That is
right. That's kind of right. We're going for a moment, and we're going to step out of. It's like when you're stepping out of character for a second to do a little. You're going to break the fourth wall.
But dude, most people can't answer that. Now you've answered that unanswerable question. One guy, they don't get it. And one guy said it's a metaphor for light. And another person said it's a metaphor for letter, the actual letter, the symbol. So that's what literal is a metaphor for, the symbol letter. So can you forget to die?
Can I forget to die?
Yeah.
No.
So again, that is a question people go, well, they're not sure if I mean it metaphorically or literally.
Well, I'm gonna break the fourth wall and say literally, no, I can't avoid that.
Yeah.
In a metaphorical sense, no, I'll never die. Especially now that YouTube is around, right?
Say that again.
No, we will never die. And as long as YouTube is around, we are gonna.
No, as long as YouTube is around, we'll never die.
There's, did you watch the movie Babylon?
Is this the new? Anyways, who? I think I know the star. She lives in Venice. Robbie.
Yeah, Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie is a Venetian. Yeah. Okay, I didn't see it, but tell me what you're going to say about it.
Oh man, I lost my track.
But there's something about that movie you were going to say. because it sort of flopped. The guy's a good filmmaker, but it was sort of a. Oh no, is Babylon Coppola? No,
No.
it's Damon. I think it's. But anyways, I know about the film, but there was something you wanted to tell me
Yeah,
about.
Damien Chazelle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Brad Pitt's one of the main characters, right? And he's dealing with this, situation, right? It's the early years of film, and people are very much not, nobody knows what's going to happen, right? As far as they're concerned, it's just ephemeral, right? And it's not going to be remembered in 10 years. And he gets really upset because there's a reviewer, and he does film, and it's supposed to be serious. And he sneaks into the back of the movie theater, on its opening, and people are laughing. And he's so upset. And one of the big reviewers in Hollywood, in the movie, calls him out on it and says, "Oh my God, this is awful. This is worst ever." And and it basically, it's tanking his career.
Yeah.
So he goes to see her and sits down, and it's one of the most beautifully acted scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time. And I'm seeing her face. She's a well-known actor. But she explains to him exactly why she hung him out to dry like that. And in it, she says, look, you should consider yourself lucky. You've had this immense career, and regardless of whether you're at the end of it, you are you, and me, as a gossip columnist, reviewer, nobody's going to remember my name in 10 years. Yeah. And in 50 years, somebody's going to take your movie off the shelf, and you will dance on that screen like you were alive.
It's amazing you said that. The first review of films in the late 1800s in the French newspaper, they got this new contraption, and they project pictures on the wall, and they move. And now we'll never die. That's the first review of movies.
I wonder if that's, was an element that they pulled for this, because it was, this the era the movie takes place is that the shift from silent movies into talkies, and how so many of the silent movie actors and actresses couldn't make that transition. And Margot Robbie's character is she's this amazing physical actor, but she's got this horrible accent, can't fucking remember her lines, so she can't make the transition. And Brad Pitt's character, his problem is more that he just can't really act. So he's, once they're actually talking involved, people are, realizing wow, he's actually really fucking horrible.
Well, Damon is a great filmmaker. I love his stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really liked that movie. I know it didn't do well, with the critics.
Yeah.
But there were enough elements like that I thought were really, really well done.
What's 3 movies that had an impact on you growing up? You said the Monty Python already. Your dad.
Yeah, of course.
But a couple others that really had an impact on you.
That's a tough question.
Are you a movie guy, basically?
Yeah. Yeah. I especially these days. Long story short. So, my wife, I'd mentioned earlier, she's been dealing with chronic illness for a long time, and for quite a while, she was so unwell she couldn't really leave the house. So our only source of entertainment was TV.
Yeah.
And, so we just got every movie channel on the fucking planet,
and
have gotten used to that. Now things have changed drastically in the last 6 months, which is actually fucking amazing.
Beautiful, good.
But in that period, it become, I watch a lot of films, far more than I read, for sure these days. But it's most of what I watch is not serious film. So, it's film for me is escapism for the most part. Something like Babylon is, an interesting cross between having some really heavy themes underneath, but it really kind of being escapism on the surface.
Well, funny is
But,
the film I've watched the most in my life is 200 Motels on the big screen, and most APA people haven't even watched it on the small screen, and most people chalk it off as it's silly, blah blah blah. But Vincent Canby in the New York Times called Frank the Orson Welles of rock when 200 Motels came out. And it is an amazing film in a lot of ways, but I can see how people will diss it. I have a bias, but it is.
Yeah.
It's way better than Baby Snakes, or in all the other films that have come out since Frank died aren't his films; they're concerts.
Yeah, it's different.
I told Ahmed we saw Atmos in the Atmos Theater, the screening of Cheaper Than Cheap, and Ahmed cried before it, and it was really emotional. I went up to him afterwards. I says, well, the New York Times called your dad on his first feature, the Orson Welles of rock, and I'm going to call you the P.T. Anderson of rock because you both were raised on Henry's tacos in the valley. I'm glad you can laugh, Conrad, because I don't know if you really got it. Like, is that an insult or is that a compliment?
Yeah, But yeah, I mean, as far as like movies that affected me when I was young,
well, just in the realm, it could be like Babylon. If it was like a film that had an impact on you,
I mean, there's a lot that So I mean, when I was a kid, obviously, I was the right age for the Star Wars stuff, right? So I mean, that was a huge thing for me. The summer Star Wars came out, I mean, that was a big deal. Fight Club.
Yeah.
Obviously not when I was a kid, but that's still, I think, an extraordinary movie in a lot of respects. Funny that two of the movies I mentioned have Brad Pitt in them. Snatch.
Don't even know that. I gotta look.
Really? Oh my God! You haven't seen Snatch?
Nope.
Good Lord, man.
I'm like classic cinema. And my thing is experimental cinema. But I was curious. You ever see the documentary on Bernard Herrmann?
No.
I would check it out because you are a person well versed in music of all types. A documentary on George Antheil singing. These guys are like movie music guys who are also just great composers on their own. That they didn't even really need their music to be put to movies. They're just great. Bernard Herrmann kind of says, nope, I'm a movie music guy. But, once you study movie music, it's like he's the pinnacle pretty much.
Gotcha.
And George the same thing, but more an experimental. In fact,
one of the things that really attracts me about movies, in general, are the actors. So it's often, that's why like the three movies that I just mentioned. So Babylon and Fight Club and Snatch all feature Brad Pitt. Not necessarily because he's my favorite actor, but he happens to be it. But almost anything Benicio del Toro is in. Because that guy is fucking amazing. That the craft of acting is attracting me more and more as I get older, and the ability of people to sort of sublimate themselves into the role where like Brad Pitt, for example, like kind of gets, or at least especially at the time, it got written off as the pretty boy and stuff, and then he goes and he does Snatch, where he's playing an Irish piker. Oh
man, I gotta see that.
Bare knuckle boxer. And he fucking pulls it like it's like holy fucking shit. You stop thinking of it as Brad Pitt. Benicio del Toro is also in Snatch. He plays a Jewish Jewish diamond heist guy. And he folds himself into these roles so entirely. Margot Robbie's fucking, she's fucking brilliant. So that's kind of what I get off on more, as I get older, is the craft of the actors, or and these things kind of stick with me.
Well, the thing is that film is in the long run. Like all art aspires to conditional music. I'm more a movie guy, especially experimental film. But in the long run, music still delivers the goods a lot better than movies. I'm let down by the cinema is only 130 years old.
Yeah.
And nothing is pinnacle. Peter Greenaway says this best. Nothing has gotten to the height of what Finnegan's Wake is in literature, in movies. You know, maybe 2001: A Space Odyssey, or some film people love. It stands out as that moment, but it just doesn't seem that cinema ever reached its pinnacle. Maybe
not. I guess I'm sure there are people who would disagree with you. I'm not enough of a film historian to be able to really say more than, there are a few directors like Kubrick and Tarantino and stuff that, if I really sat down and thought hard about what my favorite, top 10, 20 movies would be, there would be a lot of both of those directors in there. And in some respects, you look at Kubrick and not just, how popular so many of his films were, but how many of his films were extraordinary moments in filmmaking. Like for one guy to have Dr. Strangelove and to go talk about flexibility as a director, to go from Dr. Strangelove to The Shining.
Yeah.
And stylistically just this drastic shift.
I love Stanley Kubrick's amazing. The guy who sat in this chair worked on 8 films with Kubrick, James Harris. But I always say, what's your favorite Kubrick film? I go, Room 237, because all 13 Kubrick films are in one film. Have you ever seen Room 237?
I don't think I have.
Oh, well, try to watch it on the big screen or watch it with your wife. It's a documentary on 5 people interpreting what they think The Shining is really all about. but it really, what it is a collage film. So you never see these talking heads. They're just voiceovers. And you see this amazing collage of all different types of film.
Neat.
Yeah. Anyways, Conrad, what a pleasure. We could keep talking forever and ever, and that's what I hope it will happen, even after I hit this stupid end screening button.
Thank you, man. This is an absolute pleasure talking with you all the time, man. And
love it. And I can't wait to see your band live. So
sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Bye.
Cheers.